Good morning, everyone. As Barry says, we're a new member of the WTG group, and we joined a few months ago, and we are a manufacturer of a polymer-based barrier system, which you see around the facility today. And we have been going for approximately 30 years. Originally, we made plastic pallets, stretch wrap, bubble film, horse jumping fences even, just to get a foot in the extrusion market. Then one day, so the story goes, a gentleman came into the factory and we just made a batch of plastic pallets. And instead of having them stacked on top of each other, we had them stacked on their end along the wall. And he did say, "I didn't know you did fencing." So from that, we've grown from a 4 million turnover 4 years ago to a 22 million turnover last year, with such clients as Jaguar Land Rover, DHL, a European framework agreement with Nestle, Coca-Cola, amongst others. So how it works, it's actually a system called Memoplex, which we have patented and trademarked. And excuse me, from the point of view of barriers, it flexes on impact and reforms. And even that one there, that would go through hundreds of cycles of that until you had to replace a component. But that's the ease of replacing over the standard steel. So the standard steel, if you hit a steel barrier with a forklift truck, it sends the whole force down to the fixings, 100%. When you hit our barrier, it dissipates the impact and sends 20% of the force down to the fixings. So I'm sure warehouse operatives have seen a lot of floor damage, grinding fixings off, leaving bits of metal in the floor. Basically, when our product is in, it's virtually maintenance free. All we say is that it needs a periodic checking of the torque settings on the fixings, and that's just because everybody's floor is different. So you have a nice reinforced concrete slab like this one here. We've come across tiled floors on top of screed and so on, just a different fixing. So what we tend to talk about is the 4 core values and the 4 Ps. People, property, profits, which we protect whilst enhancing performance. So we have actually a story protecting people. Segregation is at the top of everyone's list at the moment. And what we did find, well, a few weeks ago actually, I went to a site where I witnessed a gentleman on a forklift truck going faster backwards than he was forwards, and he actually had iPod earphones in. So, and unfortunately, even when I'm measuring up for the barriers doing a site survey, they don't tend to stop for you. So that's how it works. Property damage, obviously the likes of dock doors, where you can see one of our bollards in the far corner, which protects it. We also do what we call a height restrictor that goes right around like a goalpost. Again, in a polymer-based system. Everything we make is polymer. The only steel part of the barrier is actually the base plate. But at the moment, we're working on a plastic foot. So we want to make it all plastic eventually. So when we talk about enhancing performance, it's more a case of designated walkways. People know where they need to be. And the segregation part comes alongside that. So obviously we've got the 3-rail pedestrian system on this side for the walkway, but we've got the actual, what we call the traffic plus barrier, which runs down from the shutter door, which is a truck type barrier. So the accidents, and we got this from the HSE, 50 deaths annually and 5,000 injuries. Obviously we get to know a lot from, obviously from the media, but also it's shared around the industry when accidents do happen. We have, unfortunately, heard about a death on site recently, about 3 or 4 months ago in Sherburn and Elmet near Leeds. And we do see a lot, but what we hope now is that people contact us before anything happens, rather than waiting till after. We don't really think, well, it's only our view, that you can't get away with a painted line on the floor anymore with footprints and so on. Because the number of sites that we go to where you see the forklift truck tyres in the actual walkway where it's been, or people stacking pallets in walkways. Because what we tend to think is that people get busier and busier and busier, but the building gets no bigger. Unless you can build on, or unless you can put a mezzanine flooring or anything like that, you're gonna be stuck with the footprint of the actual building. So, as we've said, people and moving vehicles, they don't mix. What we want to do is try to reduce that risk by putting in designated walkways. We do a variety of other products as well, main steel column protection, car park barriers, so on and so forth. So we actually do all our own site surveys, because the barrier is spec'd on a horses for courses type basis, because it all depends on the size of the truck and the weight it's carrying. Sometimes even angle of impact, because we know a lot of people are tight for space. So, the relevant costs associated with any accidents. It isn't just about the property, the floor damage. I mean, the main ones, I would say, are the ones along the top row. So you've got people, as we've talked about, a death and injuries, the compensation and fines that need to be paid, and obviously the production downtime when there is an incident and it needs to be addressed. And probably a large amount of damage is done to the brand reputation. There is a little story when I went to a site again, when a guy said to me, "We need to get your barriers in." I said, "Yeah, I believe you hadn't heard of us before now." He said, "No, I hadn't, but we actually lost a contract on the state of our barriers." So I went into the warehouse, had a look at the barrier. Obviously you could shake it, the fixings were out, there was only one in each corner rather than the 4 you see in the base plates. And he said that the guy, the prospective customer, had actually said to him, "Do you take as much care with your products as you do with your driving?" And he never placed the order, which I've never come across since. So what we're trying to do at the moment is there's standards for every one of those on the list, apart from, believe it or not, safety barriers. We've been working for the last 18 months with the BIS with writing a standard for safety barriers. One of our directors has formed a steering committee made up of some blue chip customers and also some competitors, because we aren't saying that you need to put our barriers in everywhere, you know, we just think there should be a standard. And again, a site I went to, they said they hadn't rewritten the procedures for barriers for 40 years. So there is still a lot of work to be done. We don't envisage it being completed for about another 12 months. So the industries that we sell into, manufacturing is, my notes. Companies such as Recticel, who make foam for sofas, the IAC Group, International Automotive Components. Airports, we do Stansted, Gatwick, Heathrow, Manchester, Edinburgh, and we do them abroad as well. Food processing, we do a lot of food and drink companies, Two Sisters Food Group, Heineken, which you'll see on another slide. Automotive industry is the biggest player for us in the market at the moment. Jaguar Land Rover is our biggest customer at present, and we also do the likes of Nissan, Toyota, Honda, and others. We also do a car park barrier, and in the last 18 months we've won 3 multi-stories, the Miriam Centre in Leeds, one in Stafford and another one in Beverley. And the distribution sites, obviously we're a preferred supplier to DHL that we've just had extended, and XPO Logistics, etc. We've done a number of sites. So the global customers, as you can see up there, we've come a long way from where we started with the barriers. And you tend to find that, I know we put the names on the caps as you'll have walked around, it's got the name on the cap, which is some nice free advertising for us. And we do a lot of multi-site customers, and it's really good that sites talk to each other and say, well, we've got this, and what do you think? And we do tend to get a lot of business from that as well. So just the applications, this just gives you an idea of what you might need. We have a two-rail system, which is actually will not take a hit from a truck. It's just for marking out pedestrian areas. What we've found is, in a lot of facilities these days, there is a lot of interaction. You don't really get a lot of areas where it's just pedestrians. The three-rail pedestrian, which is the next one, that'll take a hit from a 1.2 ton fork truck with a load on. And then the further up you go, 1.5 to 3.5 ton, that's the Traffic Plus system, which you'll see over there. And we do one above 3.5 to around about 6.5, 7, which is actually 2 big rails at the bottom and 1 small rail on top. That's what we call double rail plus. Anything above that, which tends to be the airport specification, is what we call Atlas barrier. We also do low level, what we call low level traffic barrier. That's more for machine and wall protection. You'll see some down at the end of the warehouse. And then we also do what we call a micro barrier, which is really just for hand pallet truck areas. It's a smaller extrusion. We also do the rack ends and the rack leg protectors. Again, you'll see them at the bottom of the warehouse on the racking. And in the leg protector, we do it in 3 different sizes, but we also have a lot of different profiles. Those are available as free samples. If you can provide me with your racking dimensions, we'll come and fit some for you, just so you can try them out. That's not a problem. So you've got your single rail rack end barrier and your double rail rack end barrier. And that again is based on the size of the truck and the weight it's carrying. We also do a curb barrier. Mainly it's used when you have a run of pallet racking against a wall. Usually the guy uses the wall as a backstop and the cladding tends to take a bit of a battering. So what we do is we sit that behind the racking but in front of the wall, so it just gives them a little bit of flexibility. People sometimes also ask us, Sainsbury's is one of the main ones, is they don't want the forks going underneath there either, so we can put curbing in between the base plates, just as a double stop really. We also do gates for access. So if you have a pedestrian walkway like this one and you need an access point, we do self-closing swing gates, we do a sliding gate arrangement, and we also do a lift gate. We can also, if you need a solid barrier but you need to take a section out for maintenance anytime, we can do that on a section on what we call slider base plates. So you can actually pull the section out, do what you need to do, and then put it back into place again. They're the height restrictors for right round the dock doors. We also do a variety of extras, truck stops. We also do a dock roller, where normally it's one big black piece of rubber with a 2-point fixing, and eventually they'll rip it off, which we've come across a lot. This actually rolls up and down with the back of the truck when it levels his suspension off. And we've had some quite good feedback from it, but we're at the moment we're doing a slight design change, so just to make it even better. We also do the main steel column protection, and we find that a lot in the distribution centres, obviously, that we can supply to there. So that's the finish of the presentation. I will take any questions before we actually do the live test. So if there's anything you need to know, please feel free. So as you can see, it just reforms after impact.